The Dating Show, brought to you by olderdatingonline.com.
Rod, what's going on?
I'm hiding from you, Debbie.
And why is that? Why are you hiding from me?
I've just got a bit of a crisis of confidence today.
Has something happened?
No, I just woke up this morning. I just feel nervous.
Nervous?
Yeah, I just feel nervous about meeting you and being in the studio with you.
It's not like we haven't done that before, Rod.
Okay. No,
you've come back.
I'm okay now. I'm all right.
Good.
But it does beg the question about nerves and dating.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Because, you can be the most confident person in the world, but suddenly get an attack of nerves.
Just like you. Yeah.
Ahead of a first date, because it's a big thing.
Yes, indeed. It's very special.
Yeah. So let's bring on an expert here. We've had him on before. He's a top guy called Manj Weerasekera. Is that right?
It sounds good to me.
Sounds good. But he's written a book as well, which is soon to come out, worth buying. It's called The Divorced Man's Guide to Finding Mrs. Right, the 5 Deadly Mistakes Divorced Men Make and How to Avoid Them. And should be in all good bookshops and available online soon. But let's hear about what he's got to say about this nerve thing and dating.
The Dating Show, brought to you by olderdatingonline.com.
I think most people, would you agree most people probably do get a bit nervous before a first date?
Yeah, I would say so. It's interesting, isn't it? It's not just when we're in our teenage years. It will go through all the way through to no matter how old we are. And especially if you're going the second time around, we still get the nerves for sure.
Okay,
Maybe even more, actually, second time round.
It can be if someone hasn't been on the dating scene for, say, 20 years. For sure, Debbie.
And also you're aware of the pitfalls more.
I think so, and also you carry some baggage with you, and that I don't think really helps.
So what are the best ways of coping with nerves ahead of a date?
Well, what I find is often, and especially with some of the clients I work with, it's that baggage that tends to create the nerves, and some of the things that can counter that is just to remind yourself how good you actually are.
But what if we don't actually believe we're that good?
Well, often the whole area of belief is a fascinating subject on its own. This thing around simply reminding yourself of some of the successes you've had in relationships, some of the good times, even if you don't believe it, I found that has an impact rather than just going on a date with your head full of all the things that went wrong in the past.
Okay, so you remind yourself of things that have gone well. You tell yourself you look good.
Absolutely. If you would like people to think well of you, in that you look great and you're good company, the first person you need to convince of that is yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a consistency in terms of self-image, self-esteem. Otherwise, it comes across as being a little bit false and put on, and people notice that.
And I suppose as well, nerves, it's not really that much of a problem if you are a bit nervous, because it does show that you sort of care and actually, want to create a good impression. Would that be the wrong way of looking at it?
It's not the wrong way at all, because you want to get that balance, and the real balance comes when you are yourself. When you're trying to be something you're not, and maybe trying to be a little bit more confident than you're not, again, people notice those things. And what I've found is, if you can be yourself and accentuate the positive side of what makes you such a great person, and do that naturally, people respond to that.
And I suppose as well, the other person is probably going to be as nervous as you are.
And that's the other thing. So if two people can create the conditions to allow themselves to be themselves, you've got the beginnings of a great date.
Yeah, that sounds good. But so there we are. We've got over our nerves enough to at least go on the date. But what could be going on in our heads that would kill our chances of a relationship coming from that date? And what can we do about it?
Well, here's the thing. We've all got, to one degree or another, the little voice that goes on in our heads, that inner dialogue. Some people have it 24/7. Other people, it just comes and goes. And what that voice says to us is indicative of basically what's in our conditioning, which is a lot to do with the baggage we've picked up over the years, or indeed growing up as a child. And what happens is that manifests up, and that can suddenly create extra nervousness, or it will come across in terms of micro-expressions. In other words, you could be saying something to someone and they understand you verbally, but they could be non-verbal cues that actually contradict what you're saying.
And aren't non-verbal cues more of the message that we receive?
Absolutely. That's exactly it, because in some studies it shows that the impact of your communication, and let's face it, when we're dating, it's all about communicating. The impact of your communication, the words we actually say represent only 7% of the impact. 93% is not the actual words. And that's quite compelling.
That's quite staggering, really, isn't it?
It is. The rest is made up of 38% approximately is the tonality you use, and 55% is your physiology. So over half of the impact of your communication is completely nonverbal.
Wow.
And I did read somewhere once that sort of when you meet somebody for the first time, you actually sort of assess them very, very quickly. Have you read that? Do you know about that?
Yeah, we tend to do that. We make references very, very fast based on our own backgrounds. And what we'll do is we'll do transderivational searches in microseconds. And it could be that someone's wearing a certain type of, a jumper or a dress, and that reminds you of someone else you met wearing something similar. And it all happens in nanoseconds. And here's the thing, you don't often know you're doing it. In fact, most of the time, you don't know you're doing it. And that can impact decisions you make about whether you think the person's right for you or not.
Well, he talks a lot of sense, doesn't he?
He does.
He does. He gives expert tips
on how to survive the dating world. But I think what he's really saying is we've got to be our own best friend and cheerleader, Rod. We have to be encouraging to ourselves.
We do. But I was just... he's got me thinking now, because about this sort of body language and all the things you're not saying just by what you're doing. I mean, I was just looking at you earlier.
Oh, okay.
And, I was just having a conversation. You raised your eyes, you pursed your lips.
I did.
Your body language was all wrong. It was telling me, go away, go away. So you've got to pick up on that, because I think you don't really sort of... a lot of the time you're just sort of listening to what somebody's saying, not really watching their body language.
But on that first date, Rod, you'll be watching.
You will. Okay. Well, we're going to have him back on very, very soon in the next edition of The Dating Show, where Manj will be talking really about behaviours that turn women off.
Yes, and hiding under the desk, Rod, is one of those.
The Dating Show, brought to you by olderdatingonline.com.